NC State football has arrived at their bye week. They enter the bye week at 4-4. What should they be working on in the bye week to be achieved for the rest of the season? Well, we have the keys.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Friday intro sponsor is FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to get started. Happy Friday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. We had a question posed to us, I believe it was sometime in the last 2 weeks, and they asked if we could do Kenton's keys for the remainder of the season. I thought that was such a good idea that we would run it on our bye week. So today, we have a Kenton's keys with a blanket over the last 4 games of the season. Let's get into it.
All right, so the first thing first, right? When you think about a QBR, we all know 0 to 100 is the level, and the grading is obviously very different from school, right? Like 99 to 100 is impossible. Nobody maintains 100 over an entire season or anything like that. 90 plus virtually guarantees you the Heisman. 80 plus, you're in the Heisman conversation or Conference Player of the Year, Freshman Year, whatever. You're in award conversation. 70 plus, depending on the conference, you could be in award contention, or depending on how young or old you are, depending on if you're coming back from injury, whatever the case may be. 60 plus, you're playing good ball. You're being a net positive for your team. You're not great. You're not like a dynamic game changer, but you're a net positive for the team. If CJ Bailey averages a 60 plus in terms of QBR for the rest of the season, that will put the Pack in a hell of a position in terms of looking up and saying, hey, we have a shot to, like Grayson has said, win out. You can't do that if he doesn't do this. Normally Ken's keys are like, oh, this may be something we need to do, or this is something to look out for. I am guaranteeing you, as sure as the sun rises on the east and sets on the west, if we are not averaging, or at least close, and I mean very close, like bumping right up against it in terms of QBR, there is no way that we run the table. And really, we'd probably struggle and be a non-bowl team this year unless we have a really high graduation rate.
Yeah, so this is not asking CJ Bailey to be Superman or completely put the team on his back for the rest of the season. We're just asking that he continue to play above average. And for reference, the last 2 games that he's played are his 2 best performances of the season. Against Syracuse, his QBR was 63.8, and against Cal, 77.4. You're going to need that level of QBR and overall performance in order to keep NC State in the win column for the rest of the season. So averaging 60 plus is where CJ Bailey should stay moving forward. And our second key here,
the running back room must combine for a minimum of 500 total yards and 6 touchdowns. Here's the thing. Even if we cannot run the ball effectively or as much as we want to, we still have to be able to do it in spurts or get it to our backs underneath to then make things happen. If we look forward and we say in these last 4 games, our running back room gave us about 300 or so yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns, we're going to struggle mightily because number 2 ties into number 1 in the way that if we are not able to have our running backs get going, those passing lanes downfield are going to look a lot more congested and tougher to throw into because our running back room would not have shown up. And it'll be a situation where teams are like, oh, we don't need to pay attention to those guys underneath at all. We can just drop everybody very deeply back and trust that, hey, we'll be able to rally to CJ Bailey and make a tackle if need be.
Yeah, and with the emergence of more passing plays and kind of an adjustment to more of an air raid offense, that's great because you get to see the arm talent from CJ and all of the, the skill player talent around him in the wide receiver room. But on some level, you're going to have to get some semblance of a run game going. And it could be incremental. That's fine, but you have to have something. 29 total yards like we had against Cal, it simply ain't going to cut it. So, I mean, you can do it on the ground, and as we've seen the last 2 games, you can also find your running back through the air. Sometimes that works just as well, especially when you have a guy like Hollywood Smothers. But yes, full agreement from me. you have to find a way to keep the running back room involved in this offense, whether that is Hollywood or Kendrick or possibly some Jordan Waters. But in my personal opinion, I think you lean heavy on the use of Hollywood Smothers moving forward. 500 total yards and at least 6 touchdowns in our third offensive key.
No more than 4 turnovers. I know some people are going to look at me like I'm crazy here, but here's the reality. If you protect the ball, you protect the brand. The reality is simple. We have been a pretty bad team in terms of generating turnovers and turning the ball over all season. But if you look at some of our biggest games, we have beaten teams everywhere but the turnover margin. Do y'all believe me now in my statements about Syracuse? Do you believe me now? Do you? I didn't say anything crazy. I am telling you, if this team protects the ball, they will win. I'm telling you right now, if this team protects the ball, everything is in front of them. Everything is in front of them. And if they accomplish 2 out of 3, maybe even all 3 of these, if they accomplish 2 out of these 3 keys, we will be just fine so long as the defense doesn't collapse. But if they commit all 3 of these 3, I am guaranteeing you we see a bowl game. I am guaranteeing it. If we see these 3 things, there is no way we don't see a bowl game.
We talk a lot about turnover margin because it is quite literally that important. And Kenton, you bring up Syracuse. When we played against Syracuse, obviously we turned the ball over 3 times in plus territory. And ultimately, that was the reason we lost that game. We ended up only losing by 7 points. Imagine if you don't turn that ball over, yeah, you more than likely win. Now, staying on Syracuse, as everyone saw last night on Thursday, Kyle McCord throws 5 interceptions. 3 of them are pick sixes, and they get completely dismantled at the hands of Pitt. Coming into that game, I thought Syracuse may or may not have been the better team. But when you can't take care of the ball and you put the ball in jeopardy so many times like that, it's nearly impossible to win a game. That is why it is so important. And yes, only 4 or no more than 4 turnovers. We're asking for about 1 per game. Is that difficult?
Maximum.
Perhaps because of what we've seen so far, but it's doable.
Yeah.
I mean, like we saw at Cal, we did turn the ball over twice there, but it ended up not hurting us in the end. Imagine if you just don't turn the ball over. It completely changes the outlook of the game, and that is why it is so important to take care of the football. And now changing gears over to the defense and special teams.
So the defense allowed less than 3 explosive plays per game. And by explosive, I mean big time, 20-plus yardage. Here's the deal. This defense, I have not seen a ton of teams just systematically drive and go play after play after play on this defense consistently. I have not seen teams carry long drives against this team without a play or 2 in there that is a 20-plus yarder. Just keep everything in front of you. Make the tackles that you're supposed to make. I am tired, and when I say tired, I mean exhausted, worn out of seeing unblocked players find ways to get themselves blocked or miss tackles. If you are unblocked, go make a play. Go be an athlete. Go do something special today. Go play like a Wolfpack defender today. The reality is, if you look at all of our losses, in any of those losses, did we allow less than 3 explosive plays?
No.
Not a single one, right? If you look at even the games that we won, we have shown the propensity to give up big plays. But again, I just want to see what it looks like when you force offenses to do it right time after time after time again. When you force Wake Forest to do it right a bunch, they could not do it. But when you said, oh, well, we'll have 2 to a gap, then we'll trust that our corner will come up and make a tackle here. Something tells me you're into something terrible. Very, very devious deeds indeed in terms of not being able to make something happen when you're unblocked. So, the explosives, you have to cut them down. You have to stop teams from getting them or else. I mean, Cal's first touchdown of the game was what, a 60, 50-something yarder? You have to be able to make that play.
Yeah, the defense, although they have struggled at points during the season, they're good enough to win a ball game if you can keep the play in front of you. And that's exactly what you saw the second half out at Cal. Yes, they did get broken down very early in that game in the first quarter, but after they tightened up, Cal's offense really didn't do a whole lot the rest of the day. If you can bottle up that effort and get it each week from here on out, the defense is good enough to withstand drives from these other opponents, because none of these four teams really have that great of an offense. Stanford, no. Duke, definitely not. Georgia Tech is probably the best offense you'll see, and then you have the Dirty Foot Club.
If you with Georgia Tech, it's Haynes King healthy?
We don't know.
That's a big deal. That's, that'll go a long way in terms of how good is that offense.
Yeah, this is the importance of complementary football. Keep the play in front of you, because if you can do that, the defense is good enough. Our second defensive and special teams key.
So the second key here is don't allow 30-plus points in any game. That's simple enough. I think that your path to winning is not shootouts. I think it's ugly rock fights. Let's make it ugly. Let's, in the words of Tiger circa 2016, make it nasty. Make these games that teams are having to say, you know what? We got lumped up, we got thumped up, we got bruised up, but we came out with 25, 20, 24, 27 points. You do not, at the end of the day, I don't want our offense to be put in a situation where it's like, hey, CJ, go out there and get us 40 or else. I just don't like it.
Coming into the season, I remember Coach Doran saying that the offense, their goal was to score at least 31 a game. And he said that mark would be good enough because the defense ain't going to give up 30. Well, in 3 out of the 4 games that we have lost this year, you did, in fact, give up 30 plus. You lost to Syracuse, and they only scored 24. That was a game that we should have won. This is the recipe. If you can hold teams under 30, our offense should be good enough to win that game. If you're struggling with the explosive and you're struggling to keep the defense off of the field, that's going to get really tough to hit this mark. So I do think this is a really good marker to keep here. If you can keep teams below 30, you should be able to win each and every one of these last 4 ball games.
Do you know? So the Wolfpack are 4-4 overall. Do you know their record when holding teams under 30, Grayson?
4-1, isn't it?
4-1. When you hold teams under 30, you are much more likely to win the game than not, okay? When teams have scored over 30 on us, have we won a single game this year?
Not one.
Not one. Very interesting. Very, very interesting there. So, again, hold these teams under 30 and you'll be just fine.
And our final defensive and special teams key?
Noah Vincent, please hit 80+% of your field goals. We have talked ad nauseum about we need to generate points. We need to find points. We need anywhere you can get them, however you can get them, you need to find them. Well, hell, if we're lining up in field goal formation inside about the 25, that needs to be automatic. That needs to be, if you're, you're lining up anywhere from really the 30 in is my opinion, where, all right, you need to be automatic from that. Everything behind that can get dicey, sure. If I'm lined up there, I need to feel comfortable. I need to know, oh, this is money in the bag, not have a college kicker moment. So please, Noah Vincent, make 80+% of your field goals.
Yeah, honestly, we haven't really seen a whole lot of Vincent this year, but when we have seen him, he has been pretty good. He's 11 of 15 on the year. To your point, Kenton, anything inside of like the 30 and 35, he's been pretty good. From 20 to 29 yards, he's 3 for 3. 30 to 39 yards, he's 6 of 6. But then after that, it does, in fact, get a little bit dicey. 40 to 49 yards, he's just 1 of 4. And then 50 plus, he's 1 for 2. Over the course of these last 4 games, I anticipate them all being relatively close. So they may or may not come down to some crucial field goal kicking. I think Vincent is a good kicker. In fact, I think he's even better than what we've seen so far. But now is the time to really put that on display. We need to be hitting at least 80% of the field goals from here on out. And if you can do that, you also give yourself a good chance to win.
That special teams aspect of this thing, the ability to get done what you need to get done in terms of just getting points when you get close and can't quite finish off a drive, that's important.
Coming up next, we're going to get into Fan Friday, addressing our top comments of the week. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first Friday sponsor is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you have to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. You can play PrizePicks alongside Drewski, Joe Budden, and MMA champ Sean O'Malley. And you can find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community every single week. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as just 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play only $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks and using the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, to get $50 instantly only on PrizePicks. Middle portion of our Friday show. It's now time for Fan Friday, addressing our top comments of the week. Here we go. First one comes from Wolfpack Fan 317 on Twitter. They say, thoughts on how the backup corners have played when White and Cisse have been out? Well, my answer is kind of vague, but in my opinion, because I really haven't heard a whole lot from Corey Coley and Devin Marshall, that means you're probably playing pretty well. If you're not the reason that I'm harping on the defense, then you're doing just fine. I think Marshall specifically, he's played some good football. I know he had the pick against NIU. That was a very good interception. They've been really solid, and I believe Marshall has another year of eligibility, so if he chooses, he'll return to the pack. He might just be a really good piece for the cornerback room next year.
Yeah, no, Grayson, you're absolutely right. It's like an offensive lineman. If you don't hear about the offensive lineman or the corners, guess what? They're doing fantastic.
Yeah.
That's kind of the deal here. And those guys have done, I mean, I can't name a game where it was just like, boy, these guys are getting cooked and exposed. Were there a lot of in-breaking routes allowed against Syracuse? Yes, but you live with that. You kind of live with it. You can't take away everything. And one of the things that is known as a quote-unquote man beater is an in-breaking route for the most part, because it's like, especially in the cover one situation where you're saying, oh, my help is to the inside. My help is that's where it's going to be. I'm not really too upset with that. Even if it is deep one, even if it is just the deep safety in cover one, you still are like, I don't. Getting beat over the top means there's nobody there. That guy's going to go bang his head on the goalpost. So I'm not mad at that. I think these corners have played fine.
Any games where you're missing Aiden White and or Brandon Cisse and we're not harping on the cornerback play, you're doing A-OK in my book, buddy. I'll tell you that much. Second one comes from Southern Six Strings on YouTube. They say, what do you make of Justin Jolie seemingly calling for the ball more? NC State football tweeted a 15 highlight reel earlier today with the caption of Mr. Throw It Up. Jolie retweets it with the caption, he down there somewhere for real, just throw it up. Whole lot of something, a whole lot of nothing. I think it's a whole lot of something because I love this. And it just confirms what we've been talking about on here for weeks. He really is down there for real. Please throw it up to this man. He is the most dynamic pass catcher on this team right now. There's a reason that he has the most receiving yards on the team. There's a reason that he's pretty much the leading receiver week in and week out. There's a reason that every time you do call his number and you throw him the ball, he produces. He can ask for the ball as much as he damn near pleases because he needs a whole lot more catches and he needs a whole lot more targets. Throw it up because he really do be down there for real. Whole lot of something.
I'm going to say a whole lot of nothing because there are much worse ways for your pass catchers to call for the ball. I think this is a jovial, like, hey, yo, I'll be open, as opposed to like, give me the damn ball. What are y'all doing, bro? I'm open. I'm always open. I'm like 7-Eleven. Give me the ball. I don't think it's one of those things. So I think it's a whole lot of nothing. And I think at some point in time, I don't know why we always do this. I don't know why we as a unit and as a team always do this. During the second half of the season, NC State always does this thing where we're like, oh, wait, this thing works. I guess we need to keep doing it, huh?
Yeah.
And we just keep doing the thing that works. So I'm sure that he's going to be slotted in to be a mainstay in this offense. So I'd say a whole lot of nothing. I mean, Joe Lee's a funny guy. He's a really funny guy. He's a really great guy, and comes from a great family as well. I doubt that this is something in by way of him calling for the ball.
I've also always found it funny when people say that different position groups tweet differently. Like
Yeah.
quarterbacks are like, great team win. We're going 1-0 this week. Running backs are like, shout out my O-line. Couldn't do it without y'all. Tight ends are typically like derp. And then wide receivers are like the snakes in the grass and no weapon forged against me. This is like somewhere in the middle because Justin Jolie, he's extremely intelligent. He has a outstanding personality. And he's
Derp
basically making it
so crazy.
That's basically like the Rob Gronkowski mold is just dirt. But Justin Jolie, he really is open like all of the time. And so this is him poking fun at it in a very lighthearted way. And I love what he said on here because, yes, he is down there. And he does this in full support of CJ Bailey. He's also had several tweets hyping up the young freshman quarterback. So whatever Justin Jolie is doing on Twitter, he's doing it the right way based on what I've seen so far. So keep it up, 15. Third one here comes from Mitchell Cox on Twitter, actually sticking on the topic of Justin Jolie. He says, with Waters' lack of effectiveness, why not try Jolie in the backfield for short yardage goal-to-go situations? Now, I believe I actually said this. I think it was either Monday or Tuesday. I don't hate this at all. And now I've always kind of had a little bit of an unorthodox way of thinking in like red zone offense effectiveness. I've never been afraid to say that when it's 4th and goal or, 4th and short, 3rd and short, and you're in the red zone, I love the idea of thinking outside of the box and bringing in a refrigerator to put the ball in the end zone. I used to talk about this a lot when we had Aleem McNeil because Aleem McNeil was a defensive tackle who played running back in high school. I always wanted to just give the ball to him when we're on the 2 or the 3 or whatever because I had no doubt in my mind that he was going to get that thing in the end zone. Little bit different situation here, but I don't hate this at all. And when you do struggle a bit to get your running backs really going in short yardage situations, and some of that is some struggle from the O-line, give me the biggest, baddest, fastest dude you got because I have full faith that he's going to get that ball across the pylon.
Money-making Mitch. This might have been a pretty good idea here because I'll tell you what, we used to have a guy who was like a tight end running back hybrid thing that we gave the ball a lot. What was it? It was Jalen Samuel, I believe it was, affectionately known as J-Sam. Man, he was pretty good at Jalen. Obviously, I played with J-Sam. I know exactly how good the guy is. I know exactly who he is. But no, seriously, I think this is a great idea. We've talked a lot about how good Jolie is at breaking tackles. I mean, why not? Why not? You know what I mean? I would only say don't do this if you do have a short yardage back. Like for all of the lack of respect I think Delbert Mims got, he was a fantastic short.
Yes.
When you put him in and you needed 2, he was going to get you 2.5. So I don't think that we have that guy right now. And, that's not a disrespect or an affront to Jordan Waters. But, he's been through a lot with the illnesses and ailments and different things this season. I have no problem with putting Jolie back there.
And last one comes from Mike Stewart. This is a basketball one. He says, MOC equals the general. He controls Pac-Man's basketball destiny. Good year from him. We have a great year on the court. Yes, I fully agree with this. And there's kind of a lot of comments along the same lines of this one on our YouTube channel this week when we talked about basketball. I'll be interested to see what type of Michael O'Connell we get this year because I think he had a different regular season than he did the postseason, of course, but I found him to be far more aggressive in the postseason. And when that happened, he's knocking down threes. Of course, he had the buzzer beater against Virginia. That's a little bit of an outlier, but overall, he took control of the offense. And that was a big reason for a lot of the postseason success because you only saw that in bits and pieces during the regular season. Whether that was either coaching or just lack of aggressiveness from Michael, I want to see him be a dog this year because I agree with you, Mike. I think a lot of this offense will go as MOC goes. We need him to be a table setter, a quarterback, the ultimate point guard supreme. I think if he is that takes his team up a couple notches.
But listen, I'm gonna call this guy Run MOC all season. You know why? Because he has to run the show. He has to be the guy. This team has to play at a high pace. I don't think we have a team that can play a slow, plodding, methodical type of ball and win. And I don't think that we have the type of kind of, hey, give us the ball and get out of the way guys that we have in the past, like a Darian Sebron, like a Taquavion Smith, where they didn't need great point guards. Neither one of those guys needed a great point guard. It was like, hey, just give them the ball. Give them the ball. Even though they both got it done in very different ways, they were guys that were just like, get the ball, move. That's it. That's your job on offense. Clear out. Clear that side of the floor out to let him cook. I don't think we have a ton of those guys. That's not something I look at and I'm like, oh, there was a recruiting error. We didn't do something right. Hey, listen, run MOC. It's your time to run the show, baby. It is your time to do special things in terms of getting these guys where they need to be and finding open guys. Let's see how it goes. But he has to be the catalyst. The team will go as he goes.
Coming up next, we're going to round out our Friday show with some football scheduling news. A new non-conference home-and-home series was scheduled, and I think this is one that NC State fans should be excited about. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second Friday sponsor is FanDuel. NFL fans, you can win big this season on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page that you're placing all of your bets. You'll get started with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed when you place just your first $5 bet on the app. It's going to be yet another extremely exciting weekend of college football. A lot less stress because NC State isn't playing, but the slate is loaded. And if that's not enough for you, of course, you always have another week of NFL the day following. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to win more. Last couple of minutes of our Friday show, some football scheduling news that came across our desk. NC State has now signed a new home-and-home series with Kansas State. It'll be a rematch of last year's Pop-Tarts Bowl. I love this move. And there was a previous agreement that fell apart with the University of Florida that was slated for 2026 in Raleigh and 2032 in Gainesville. This looks like it's probably taking the place of that. Kansas State will come to Raleigh in 2027. We will make the return trip out to Manhattan, Kansas in 2032. Kenton, what do you think of this?
I think it's nice. I think it's a good deal to kind of, play other Power 4 teams in your non-conference. Beating up on the island of Misfit Toys University is cool and all, but I want to see real football even early in the season. And beyond that, I think NC State and Kansas State have a lot in common. I think that Kansas State is like NC State with the luck of the Irish on their side, like with a horseshoe in their back pocket, because they are very much so the same way in that they're the school that doesn't get as much love as their counterparts nationally in KU and whatnot, and they get referred to as little brothers despite the fact that they constantly take those boys to the woodshed on the field and whatnot. And so, it is – I like them. I like Kansas State fans a lot. I like Kansas State as a university. Little Apple is such an appealing place in terms of like there's a homey charm to it that you hear about a lot. And, more power to you. That's a physical and aggressive team. And their physicality has stretched across decades. So it's not just like, oh, it's climbing. It's not. It's whoever. It's their way of life. It's their way of doing things. And I love that about them. Hopefully NC State can model that and have our own success. Hopefully we can take the horseshoe from them while we're over there. Just go ahead and take whatever lucky charms there is that they got rolling.
If you picked up NC State University and dropped it in Kansas, you would get Kansas State. It is essentially a very, very similar school. They're both land-grant universities. The overall personality of both fan bases are extremely similar. And of course, we did face them in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and you found out their fan base is awesome. And they're very, very much like ours. And so I think not only will the games be fun, I think the tailgates between these two fan bases will be an absolute blast. So
boys don't be doing no cooking in Kansas. Don't be doing no cooking in Kansas for real. Come to Raleigh and prove me wrong. Come to Raleigh and prove me wrong. I'll be out there. Y'all better prove me wrong, Kansas State.
When the Wildcats make the trip to Raleigh in 2027, we'll have to show them a good time because I'm fully confident they will show us one in 2032. And despite being bummed about losing out on the series with Florida, this, for me, it makes up for it. I think this can be a lot of fun, and I'm fully on board with this. That'll do it for us here on Friday. Thank you all so much for joining us this week. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box. Tell us what you think about Kenton's keys for the final 4 games of the season. If you have any additional ideas of your own, drop those in the box as well. Anything else you have on your mind, drop your thoughts on this new home and home with Kansas State. Anything else you got, drop that in the box as well. Mash that subscribe button if you have not already. Obviously, football is on a bye week, so we will not have a post-game live for you this week. We'll be right back at it with you here on Monday. So until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.